The primary purpose of Innovative AAC Solutions, the podcast, is to educate and inform. The views expressed during all episodes are solely those of the individuals involved and do not constitute educational or medical advice. They are not necessarily the views of Special School District of St. Louis County.
Hey, Laura.
Hey, Cheryl.
What's up with you as far as your new decor goes? I like your office.
Well, I just thought, for another episode, we needed another new place for our season contest to figure out where I'm at.
I love those colors. Did they sell that in wallpaper? I think I'm going to do my office with that.
I mean, if I had a library like this, I may never leave. This is one of my favorite places, favorite movies, just all around good stuff. So that'd make it a little tricky. It may be really easy for some people, but I have some really good swag. I'm going to turn off my background here. And you can see, nope, hold on.
Yeah, it's hard to get things to, there you go.
Check out the swag.
Whoa.
So this
lamp and word power?
Yes.
Wow.
So this is our giveaway for today that we are giving away for whoever emails us first with the correct background.
That's a good one.
One that I got from a conference recently, and like putting our materials in there and having a board to which to model.
Yeah. Multi-purpose. I love it.
I'm all about the multi-purpose.
And it's big. That's my thing.
So
little bags don't do it. Big bags do it. Yeah.
Right. So many opportunities for whatever you need in there, especially if you're like moving from classroom to classroom or you're, trying to take AAC on the go. I love a good AAC on the go moment. But yeah, welcome back, you guys. Welcome back to another episode of Innovative AAC Solutions. Let's just dive in, Cheryl. What do you have this week for fun finds?
Yes. Okay. So previously, how long has it been? We had Vicki Clark on our podcast this season. So it hasn't been that long, but it's been a couple back. And she shared information with Laura about all kinds of wonderful things. And Laura and I both are fangirls. I mean, it's just so much good stuff. Well, Practical AAC, just as of yesterday. So they were waiting for us to, do this episode. Released, and I think I referenced it maybe on my Facebook page that she was going to have a series on Practical AAC. Well, this is her first post about kind of, again, giving us practical resources, strategies. So I'm going to share my screen. And
I'm already excited. You said Vicki Clark and you had me at Vicki Clark. Cheryl.
Yeah. No, and that's, as I said, everything she's done, it's been like, oh, it's so good. Well,
and if you haven't watched, I was going to say, if you haven't watched that episode, it's the woman behind the resources, and it is jam-packed. It is one of my absolute favorites. So please go back and listen to that episode because there's so many gems.
And I think what I'm going to share right now is I thought we covered it well with all kinds of good stuff, but I found either I've forgotten or she's added. So I'm going to go with she's added because I don't forget things, Laura. Obviously, it's a steel trap we're talking about. The idea of just, she packaged it. And I think that's my big thing right now is the more we package things and hand them to people, the easier life can be and the more progress we're going to show. So anyway, I'm going to scroll and the title is AAC Implementation Framework, Step 1, Determining the Target. And again, I'm at Practical. That's spelled PRAACTICAL. AAC.org, practicalaac.org. And this is their post just this week. So it'll pop right up when you go to that site. Or it'll be.
And we'll put the link in the show notes too. So you guys will have access to that. But what does it have for us, Cheryl?
All right. So she talks more about, what we're going to look at. So lots of good information here, but then she's sharing her forms. She's sharing how she goes in and her team goes in and gets more information. So talking about home, we want to bridge between what we're doing at school and what they're doing at home, but home is so much good communication. Home is where the heart is, Laura. So that's where communication is probably, I feel the most important because that's life. school, yeah, home is life. So home is where we need to make sure we've got those people, parents, siblings, grandparents, caregivers, everybody supported. So what's going on at home? What kinds of things do they like to talk about? Then, of course, there's the classroom, gathering information. And again, I don't want to make you too dizzy, but I'm going to scroll down. And then she talks about classroom communication environment. So I think we've shared this form. This one is one that she had, but there's also a home and community communication environment. Again, all of our kids are out in the community. The older they get, the more out in the community they may be. So I want to make sure we're talking about those places.
Oh, and can I just say too, Cheryl, I love the spot where it talks about the word priorities, right? Because priorities can look different for different people in different environments. And then those priorities can change, right? So maybe our priorities right now are really working on sharing and advocacy. But then next year, maybe our priorities shift to social relationships. And so helping team members and the AAC users identify that, I think, is huge.
And I think when our students realize we are focused on them as a person and their priorities, it's that reason to communicate is so much better. It's more honored. So they want to do their part as well. I think sometimes we come at our kids. We don't engage our kids. So this would be, yes, what do they want to talk about? And watch this, it's still coming. Again, more and more information. But there's a video. She narrates a video and talks about all this stuff. So whatever your learning style is, whether you sit and read or whether you sit and listen, I have to lean towards the listening part more these days. She's spelling it out. She's such a wonderful resource. But again, step one, there's more to come. So I was thrilled. I knew it was coming, but I kind of lost track of what time frame to look for, and it just popped up. So I love it when those things are meant to be.
Well, and what a versatile tool! Like the tools she's sharing are not system specific, right? So this can be applied to any language organization. It can be applied to any AAC system that you're looking at, whether it be low, mid, high, semantic compaction,
combination, all the above,
taxonomic, like any kind of organization that we're looking at, this can apply and be so useful. So what a great resource, Cheryl.
Yeah. No,
I can't wait for the next ones.
Yeah. And that's to say they may reference it here as far as total number, but it was a few. It wasn't just one and done. So we will help keep you notified. But that was something that I want you to just automatically. Ideally, you should go to Practical AAC. You should be following them on Facebook. I don't know about Instagram. Are they on Instagram?
They are. They don't post very much on Instagram.
Okay.
Carol focuses most of it on the blog. You'll see
the pop-up of here's what's the latest. So definitely Facebook would be a good source. Well, it's at the top of the screen. And
Vicky,
Facebook page, Twitter.
Yeah, well, Vicky's on Facebook too, or on Instagram. I mean, so she has shared this on Instagram as well. So lots of places to find it.
This is always a good place to go to look for things, but today was extra special. All right.
Well, you're talking about packages. Let me talk to you about a new package that I found that I think everyone's going to be really excited about, Cheryl. And that is something that is called Active AAC. What do you think that means?
I think it means we're going to be reciprocal. We're going to be working back and forth, something like that, maybe.
Yeah, you're on the right track. So interestingly, I kind of was wondering why this wasn't on AAC Language Lab, but this is a little gem of a resource, a big gem of a resource in my mind, that is available now on the chat corner side of Saltillo's website. So if you go to Saltillo's website and you go to implementation, you'll see chat corner SLP. That is where this lives. And so I'm going to also share my screen so you can kind of see when we're here under chat corner, there's this little link over that says active with AAC. It might look a little familiar, Cheryl, because it's super similar to the resource that we hand out when we talk about our innovative implementation activity for the week. Look at all of these activities: dress up, ball pit, bubbles, cars, I Spy, obstacle course, pop-up pirate, hi-ho Cheerio, gardening, acting it out cards, Yeti in my spaghetti. I mean, come on, it's growing. So
anything you would want to do, I think we've got it covered somewhere here. Yes, that's
so
beautiful.
Go ahead and pick one, Cheryl, and I will open it up and we can talk about it.
All right. Well, because games are popular during therapy sessions, let's go to, and I grew up with Hi Ho Cheerio. So let's do that one.
Okay. Hi Ho Cheerio it is. So when you pull it up, like I said, very similar to what we have, it talks about your core words, your materials, 1-word, 2-word, and 3-word examples, and then how we're communicating, right? Reasons to communicate, whether it be requests, exchanging info, social interaction, and some tips on how to succeed. But here's also what I love, Cheryl. It gives you examples of how to model on the device. And if you have a flip chart, like if you have one of the light tech flip books that we offer and support, it gives additional supportive pages for that so that you can participate in that activity. So like for this one, it has the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, and then it has bucket and it has awesome and bummer. I was blown away when I saw that. I was like, this is just so wonderful. So it gives you all the resources right here. And then one other one I just wanted to point out was this daily device checklist. I opened it and I immediately felt like every single one of my students needed it. So it has instructions in print, get my talker, turn it on, I'm ready to go, tell if there's what I need, use my voice, put my device up. So it has all of that for the communication partner or anyone who is literate. But then down here, it has it with some symbols in case they would benefit from symbols or we're going to model this on their device. And it has a check mark so we can have this posted in the classroom or at home. So
I love that.
Yes.
I think I see all of our kids running around with clipboards now.
Yes. I don't know about the put my device up. I think I might just cross that one off or cut it off the bottom. But
does it talk about charging? Maybe we'll change that to charge my device.
Oh, yes. It does talk about charging up here. So I think that's what they mean here is putting it away so it can be charged.
Yeah.
And maybe just add that little tidbit at the bottom. But anyway, it was just, I was so excited. So excited.
Yeah.
So that is my fun find for the week. We will put this in the show notes. It does help to be able to read some of these lists, Cheryl. And I know we sat down with Kelly Fodder at our last episode. I thought a nice branch to talking about writing would be the thing that's so closely intertwined, which is reading. We had the chance, I had the chance, I selfishly took the chance to sit down with a wonderful SLP named Ashley Larisey. If you don't already know her, she is doing some amazing things and really diving into the world of AAC and literacy. And so we sat down and we really dove into the topic. And I was so excited. The things that she has to share, the insight, the examples that she gives are so relevant to all of our students who are emergent readers and who need support in literacy. I just was at a training the other day where we talked about how we really can't even say our full names if we pull out a device unless we have access to all 26 letters of the alphabet, right? If you pull out a device and you haven't programmed anything, or even if you need to program your name, you have to have access and understand the keyboard, the letters, the alphabet. So we need that for all of our students. And so what are the strategies? What do we know? What don't we know? What do we still need to know? And how do we support them?
And she, I know, talked about older students too. So it's not just the little guys that you're saying, oh, well, we'll start, but it didn't click, so we'll just give up. And she's adamant about, no. We keep working and we keep finding ways to make it meaningful for them. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. She has a passion for working with older students. And so, a lot of our examples come from, when we say emergent, people think early kiddos or kiddos that are
just now being exposed.
Students that are in elementary or even early childhood. But no, anybody can be an emergent communicator and anybody can be an emergent reader. So we're going to dive into that. So I have put everybody on the hook long enough. Let's dive into our interview with Ashley Larisey. Hi guys, welcome back to Innovative AAC Solutions. And today our guest, I'm so excited to introduce her. Her name is Ashley Larisey. She is amazing. I'm going to let her kind of introduce herself because I'm not going to do her justice, but She is a wonderful resource and knowledge of all things AAC, but today we are specifically going to hone in on AAC and literacy. So, hi, Ashley. Welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Laura. How's it going?
Good. I'm just not going to do it justice. So, can you tell our listeners a little bit about your background and kind of what drove you into the world of AAC?
Yeah. So I'm a speech language pathologist. I work in a public high school in the greater Chicagoland area. I always like to say that's what we say around here. And I've been in a lot of different settings. I've been in early intervention. I've been in private therapeutic day schools, lots of different places. But I really enjoy working in a public high school. I really like working with the age group that I work with. I think that it's like a very pivotal time in the lives of families and the lives of students. And so I just feel very privileged to be a part of that. I kind of fell into AAC on accident. Like it wasn't ever something that I had any experience with. I didn't know about it in undergrad. I have my bachelor's in psychology. And I just didn't know. I knew I needed to do something more with that. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know if I was going to go get like a degree in social work or where I really wanted to go with that. And so I took some time off and I worked as a paraeducator at a residential school in Kansas, which is where I'm from. And I was introduced to AAC there. And it just, I don't know, it just really like impacted me, I think. And I totally changed my career path. And so I did post-bac classes and went to school for speech and always knew that I wanted to work with AAC and, you know, have been doing so in some capacity since that time. I have taught courses in the class, focused more on the use of technology versus the AAC component, but AAC is obviously intertwined in a lot of that. I have worked as a clinical educator, which is just so rewarding. I learn so much from the students that I support, and I hope that they learn from me too. So that's kind of how I'm here and just my background.
So I didn't know the piece about the paraeducator in Kansas. That's so interesting, you know, here in Missouri, just now that you're on the Illinois side things too. Yeah. It's just so exciting to me. It kind of comes through because something we've talked about on the podcast is we've highlighted some of your resources for older students and individuals that I think some people have a harder time wrapping their heads around. And so it really comes through the fact that you've been in the classroom, like you really know what works, what doesn't work, what students need, and what drives them.
Yeah. I love that experience. And I think, you know, if there's anybody that's out there listening that's maybe thinking about going back to graduate school and is having a hard time getting in, there's not anything that I would recommend more than going and having that like experience in the classroom, working, with students directly, working with teams, families. And it gives you such great insight and you really get to know the students so well, so much more, I feel like, than I even get to now. You know, as a speech path, we just don't see students as much as we do when we're working one-on-one with them every day. Right.
Yes. Oh, love it. Such great perspective. Yes. Go back. Do follow your dreams. It's never too late. So, you know, tying it in, you've worked across the gamut. You have amazing ideas and resources for the high school student who is supported with AAC. But one of the things that I feel like is a passion of yours, that is a passion of ours here too, is this idea of literacy and how we join literacy within robust communication systems and learning. So for someone that is like, oh yeah, what does literacy have to do with it? Let's talk a little bit about what does literacy look like?
Yeah. I think that so much of this, I think, goes back to like pre-service training in speech. What does that look like and what kind of education do we get in terms of literacy? I can only speak for myself in that it was very, very, very scratch the surface, like embedded within language disorders. I didn't have like a module specific to literacy. I didn't have a literacy course. I know that some people have had that, but oftentimes even with that, it's geared more towards conventional literacy learners, like how can we support students, who might demonstrate speech sound errors and how that might carry over to literacy. There's not as much focus on emergent literacy learners, like students who are, maybe they don't know their letters, all of their letters most of the time, Maybe they don't understand that print has meaning. Maybe they don't really engage during like a shared reading experience. There's not really as much about that. So that's just like as a whole, but then you embed that AAC piece and it's like, whoa, how does a child who uses a communication device read? How do I know that they are reading? What does that look like? So I think that as a speech therapist myself, I think literacy in and of itself was intimidating when I first graduated, but even more amplified with AAC users because I just truly didn't know what to do and I didn't have that pre-service training. And so a lot of that was learning on the go. But, I knew how important it was because our students they're always, no matter how robust a system is, a word-based system is never going to provide access to every single thing that somebody wants to say. Just can't. There's just not enough buttons. There's not enough space. There's going to be, in my experience, usually fringe type words, that it might be the name of my favorite restaurant or like this new drink that I just tried or something like that, where I can't combine words in a word-based system to say the name of Portillo's, which is like a Chicago hot dog restaurant. I can't say that unless I have access to the alphabet and unless I know how to use that. And so I think that was really my drive to go and figure out, okay, like, how do I do this? What does this look like? And even working with high school students, a lot of times, everybody is so well-intentioned. I do believe that. I believe that people are very well-intentioned, but I think that people think that that's not a functional skill to work on them with them anymore. That if they don't know all of their letters of the alphabet, like what are we doing when they're 14? We need to be focusing on something different. And I just don't believe that. And I've seen it. I've seen kids learn all of their letters of the alphabet at 16, 17 years old, and they're starting to spell, and they can use things like initial letter cueing to help somebody figure out a word, even if they can't spell it. Even if they could say, I went to a restaurant and they had hot dogs and it starts with P. Being from Chicago, I'm going to be like, oh yeah, Portillo's, but if I don't have that cue, there's 100 hot dog restaurants that I could be thinking of. So I think thinking about it, even in like smaller increments like that, I'm not saying that a student that's my end goal, is that they can spell and say anything that they want to say. But how much does that letter sound correspondence? How much does that skill give them in order to improve their communication with somebody else? So I think that's where the passion came from, is a very lengthy response. But yeah, I am very passionate about it.
Well, and I hear you talking about the idea of autonomous communication too, right? So that we're not reliant on someone who is going to program every single customization for us. To be able to program ourselves, we have to have literacy, some level of literacy skills, so we can customize ourselves and we can build that competency, or just cue our communication partners to repair that communication breakdown, right?
Yes.
I've had several examples of students where they did an M because McDonald's wasn't in their system, and they were like, I had chicken nuggets last night. Like, I want to talk about McDonald's chicken nuggets,
Right.
not your cafeteria crummy, cruddy, old, nothing to cafeteria McNuggets, but like they're not the same as McDonald's. So,
and that's what it's about. Like, it's about the connection. It's about being able to connect with somebody else and to be able to share your own experiences as an individual. And literacy is going to give our students the ability to do that, and I think another thing that I always talk about is this, something that I didn't think about until I really started working with older students, is that, when they graduate or they move on or they go to adult services, they have all of these like friendships and relationships and things that they've built, just like any of us, friends from high school. But how do I stay in contact with those people? It's using literacy. It's texting, it's emails, it's, social media. That's how I stay connected with these people. It's not that I'm having these face-to-face conversations anymore. So if we're not working on that, like throughout really the lifespan with an individual, I think we just have some real missed opportunities for individuals to be able to socially connect with people that they want to connect with. If I was just bound to connect with the people that I see, my social network would be so limited. It would be so limited. I think we could all think about that for ourselves. So I just think we're doing our students a disservice if we're not hitting on literacy without an end in mind, without like an end, without a ceiling where we say like, oh, they're too bold.
And one more thing I heard you say that I think is important to note, not to drill the point home, but to drill the point home. I heard you talk about like the social media aspect even within the writing component and that written expression piece that we know closely aligns itself to these literacy skills. It is, from what I've heard from adult AAC users and just the advocacy piece of this, there's so much autonomy there because there's no timing aspect. They can take as much time as they need to formulate their message and share it with whoever they want to across social media platforms, across emails, across texting. It's removing that constraint that they are so often under when they're having a face-to-face conversation with someone. So I love that correlation and that tie, and just building in those opportunities I think is so important. But let's dive even deeper. So what if someone's like, oh yeah, we've tried all the conventional literacy tactics and they can't identify their letters. They're really struggling. I don't think this is the route that we're going to go. We've tried it for years. We started with A, they haven't gotten it. We tried a couple other letters in their name. Is all lost?
No, no. I bet you knew I was going to say that, right?
It was a lead-in, but yes.
I know. Yes. No, it's not. And I think that, again, thinking about everybody being well-intentioned. And so, and I say this because I've even done these well-intentioned things myself. I think we all have. I think we've all done things the wrong way. Learning is unlearning for a lot of us. So I think that sometimes like really thinking about, okay, what have we done? What does literacy instruction for this emergent learner look like? Sometimes people are focusing on strictly that letter identification. I see that a lot. Like I'm just working on, we're going to identify letter A in a field of 2, with 100% accuracy, or we're going to identify 10 new letters of the alphabet with, 100% accuracy. That whole like letter identification piece, that's such a little tiny component of literacy instruction. And it's very explicit. So if we aren't making any connections between that letter A that I'm trying to identify, and, maybe I'm walking in the store and I see that bag of apples and I hold it up, be like, oh, it's that letter A that we were just talking about earlier. That's the first letter in apples. They can't understand that print has meaning. And that's one of those things that students really need to be able to demonstrate before we really start working on more conventional literacy sorts of strategies. So I think making sure that, we are hitting on like every component of emergent literacy instruction, and that it's not just letter identification, that, we're working on communicating and engaging during those sorts of like shared reading experiences. I think that shared reading, that's like another common pitfall. I think we hear shared reading and we're like, oh yeah, like reading with other people. That's even what I thought. I'm like, oh yeah, I do that. I totally do that. But how are we doing it? Are we asking a bunch of questions? Like, where's the girl? What are they doing? Who's in this story? That's not shared reading. Shared reading is really that we're making comments about whatever it is that we're reading, and we're waiting, and we want to see what the student is going to initiate. What is it that they notice? What is it that they think about what's happening in the picture or in the activity? Because that's what shared reading is. It's communication and interaction. We're not working on like the questions, like that's later. We really want to focus on developing that love for literacy. I want to read. I'm not reading because somebody else is making me do it, but I want to do it. I want to learn how to do it. That intrinsic motivation is so key. So I think that those are just good questions to ask. If we think that we've done everything, going back through each of those different components that we need to hit on for emergent literacy instruction, and making sure that we're doing it with fidelity and we're doing it across the day, and we're trying to make connections between what they're learning and, how it presents in their daily life.
Who would you say classifies someone who would be an emergent literacy, who would fall under that category?
Yeah. So I take, I think we all do. Dr. Karen Erickson and Dr. David Copenhaver wrote the book Comprehensive Literacy for All. It came out in 2020. Before that, they had a book, The 4 Blocks Literacy Framework. And some of the things in Comprehensive Literacy for All in that text are really updated from the 4 Blocks text. But really, we're focusing on, for emergent literacy learners, we're looking at students who maybe don't know most of their letters most of the time. They talk a lot in the text about how there's really just this over focus on like mastery. So not getting too caught up in that, right? Like if they know most of their letters most of the time, we're moving on. We're moving on, and we're doing other things where we're still working on those skills, but we're working on them maybe in a different way. Do they engage during that shared reading? So are they communicating about text? I think we can all think of a learner that knows all of their letters and maybe even knows some sight words, but they don't engage during shared reading. They don't know how to communicate and interact during that. So we really want to focus then more staying in that kind of emergent level before we're moving on. We don't have a really good foundation if we're moving on too soon. We want to make sure that students understand that print has meaning, so that, that text means something. It says something. It corresponds to, a word or something that, gives me an indication of what it is or what it's about. And then lastly is that students have a means of communication and interaction. So that's that AAC piece, for students, and making sure that it is robust enough that they're able to say whatever it is that they want to say. If it's like a 12 location core board, it's not going to be enough for them to make a comment during shared reading. It needs to have enough language so that they're able to communicate and interact. If we give them something with just 12 core words, and then we're not moving on because we say they don't engage during shared reading, well, that's not really fair. They can't. There's just not enough language there. So those are the things that I keep in mind when I'm thinking about an emergent literacy learner. And if they're beyond, if those are 4 yeses, if I could say yes to all 4 of those questions, then we're doing more conventional sorts of interventions.
Love it. I love the recap and just thinking about a different way to look at it, reframing of okay, so we've identified that they might have all of their letters down, but they are not engaged. They're not commenting. They're not super active participants in shared reading. So if we're going down the road of emergent literacy, what are some, you guys have shared several resources on social media about resources, and you've just presented on it. But for someone who hasn't seen some of those resources, what are either some go-to resources, or what are some things to dive into if we really want to jump in the deep end of emergent literacy for our students in the classroom? What are some good starting points?
Yeah. So the first thing I would say is not to overwhelm yourself, because I think that sometimes that it's easy to feel that way. Like, oh my gosh, I've been doing this wrong. I need to learn all of this at one time, and I need to implement it tomorrow the right way. Don't do that to yourself. It's not fair. Give yourself grace and give yourself time. Some of my favorite resources are, so that book, obviously Comprehensive Literacy for All. I can't recommend that book enough. The first, I think it's 6 chapters are dedicated more to just like understanding why literacy is so important for students with significant disabilities, and then talking mostly just about emergent literacy. There's a book study group that Alyssa Wern runs. I believe it's Comprehensive Literacy for All book study.
Right,
Karen, Dr. Karen Erickson is actually in the group, and she has been answering questions, and I have been eating it up because, that's, there's a lot of different people who are using it more as following, Alyssa's guide for the book study and different sections as she opens that up and talks about different chapters every week. But it's also just a great forum to ask questions if you're not sure. And then the Project Core has a great set of modules that are all about emergent literacy. The first, I would say 5 or so were really dedicated to Project Core in that project, but there's the last, if you scroll down through those modules on the website, you'll see modules for each of those different components. Like, how do I work on alphabet knowledge and phonological awareness? What are some like accompanying sheets or tips or things that can help me? And as I'm learning more about that, even just taking that, if you take just one module at a time, and I just say, okay, I'm going to learn about shared reading, this, set a time increment or a goal for yourself, and work on kind of honing that in and feeling better about that and layering things in as you feel more comfortable, I think those project core modules have been just very wonderful for the teams that I work with, families. It's been great for. They're very user friendly, not jargon. They have different activities to keep you engaged as you're going along. So those, I think, are really good places to start.
And if you're looking for that website, it's project-core.com, and it is heavily research-based. It is, I believe it's a federally funded grant that they got. I know it's grant funded, but it's a really great one too. Just if you guys are looking for, in general in the district, if you're looking for something for your teacher assistants or your parents to help with and understand better. I know that I'm constantly getting asked, well, what can we do? What education can we do? We need something on such and such date. We're not going to this other training. They do give you certificates, and they are recorded with the support materials to go with them. So it's a really great one in general for anything AAC, but also with literacy, as Ashley's mentioning. I also just wanted to say comprehensive literacy for all is available in the Instructional Resource Center if you would like to really kind of just fully immerse yourself in it. It is a lot. And I would say just echo what you're saying as far as take one thing and just try that strategy and really blend it into your learning in your curriculum. But so there's so much to unpack in it and so many things that we can be doing better to support this. So can you give, you mentioned it's never too late, right? You haven't failed at learning literacy and we're going to go down a different road. I think sometimes we think, okay, well, let's go down the path less taken. What can you give the listeners an example of someone who they might have thought that this was a lost cause or someone who wouldn't benefit and they changed everyone's minds?
I guess I have like more of a personal story, just thinking about students, kind of following along with the lines of not getting stuck there too long. You want to stay in emergent literacy, but you don't want to get stuck there and like waiting for this mastery piece. You want to move on when it's time. So at the beginning, this was actually this year, I have a student who I would say, met all of the criteria for moving on to conventional literacy, except for that knows most of the letters most of the time. He thought it was the most boring, tortuous thing to try to sit and learn letters, and would, show that through things that he would do. He would get up and walk away from the table. He would tell you, I'm not doing this. So that I think a lot of times was paired with, this has been done in this, field of 2, you're going to do this for 20 trials and then we're done. So I had a group where we were working on making words, and making words is more it's more for conventional literacy learners. Once they know all of that, they're kind of taking a group of 6 different letters and they're making different 2 and 3 letter words. Like I'm making and then I'm going to take away the D or the N and add a T to make at. I'm going to add a C to the beginning to make cat. So I'm just using a small field of letters to make some simple words. Great for like early conventional learners. And this student I was stuck with, because I was like, well, he just, this is the piece that's missing. This is the piece that's missing here. And we could put him in, the group where they're working on more like, alphabet, like a very explicit alphabet routine. I'm finding the letter in text. I'm practicing writing the letter. I'm only doing 1 letter of the day. I'm not, drilling it to death. We're going to go find it around the building and things like that. But there was just something about it where I just was like, I don't know. Like, I think we're going to put him in this group. We're going to put him in this group and we're going to see how it goes. And we're going to give him a lot of support. It might not look the same way that it looks for other students. But we're going to really focus on these letter names and these letter sounds at the beginning of the activity. And I would say like the first couple of weeks, it was difficult. And I kind of was questioning like, oh, I don't know. I think we might need to move, but I didn't. I didn't want to. I wanted to leave him there because I knew he could do it. And by the end of this school year, making words, you're making usually six different words, like per activity, 2 to 3 letter words. By the end of this school year, we've gotten up to some more 4-letter words. He was doing it with 100% accuracy by the end of the school year. And it was because we moved on. And now we're doing something that's meaningful. We're taking these letters and I'm making words with them. That is more meaningful. And it was repetition with variety. It's like we're doing the same thing every day. The TAs are running it when I'm not, the paraprofessionals are running it when I'm not in the room. It's very explicit, but he was doing it, and it's just like, yes, and people, I think, would have looked at him and were just looking at that alphabet component and saying like, no, he doesn't know his letters. And but then he has all of these other things. He's so interactive. He's so engaging. He understands, can you type this into Google for me? Because I need to go look for this. So yeah, that was just like a huge win. I feel like, I felt so good about it and just like happy for him,
Yeah.
He had the pride that he has, that he's able to do that is just, and letters they're not boring anymore. They're fun. He loves it.
And isn't that why we all get into it? We all get into it so we can see the pride on our students' faces and that level of accomplishment. Like we want that for all of our students. And I think, Ashley, you hit on something that is so almost invaluable and a huge takeaway is the idea that so many times I think we get stuck in this explicit instruction and thinking about it more of an embedded instruction way and getting creative with the way we do embedded instruction. Are there some other examples you could give of taking something that's explicit and then really trying to embed it in across more things so that it synthesizes a little bit more?
Yes. I think that's how we develop, or we help students develop that intrinsic motivation, because they will understand that this can be applied in my own life in this meaningful way. It's not meaningful to sit and identify letters of the alphabet to anybody. That's not meaningful. But if I can see that I could use that letter to write a note to my friend, or that, that I can use it as a way to communicate. Really, that's ultimately what this is about, right? It's communication. That's where you can't separate these. Literacy has to be a part of this. Literacy is communication. It's communication through reading and writing. And so if the more ways that we can kind of think outside the box as far as how we can teach our students that part of it, I think the further that they'll go.
Yeah. And again, that creative piece of just a lot of our students don't even get the opportunity to write as an emergent literacy student. Like they don't know what writing is because they never had the opportunity to write. So letting them scribble on their AAC system, letting them make their own picture of what they think was represented in the story they just read, pulling together those pieces of giving the meaning behind it is so helpful, because like you said, if it's only explicit, why would any of us do it?
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, like we think about it in adult terms, like I didn't get much out of my calculus class. I don't know if you had to take a calculus or pre-calc test. Like, I'm like, I don't understand what this
don't
means.
Remember anything.
Nothing. Like there was some arcs and some things, like, I don't remember any of it. I knew that being a doctor and like going down into biophysics and engineering, none of those were for me because I took this class. I was like, it has no meaning, nothing.
Right.
So, thinking about our students, do they see these symbols on a page and graphemes on a page and think, oh, that's meaningful to me? Or how do we make it more meaningful?
Exactly.
And that's, even if we really look into it too, something that they talk about in the book is that it's typical development when you really look at it. There's a scaffold in the way that we all learn how to write and all learn how to read. And just because it's not conventional in the sense that it's not how we traditionally think of academic learning to read, doesn't mean that it's not still on the continuum of what we would expect to be reading development, literacy development, writing development.
Yes. I love the developmental writing scale. I think that can help. I think it can help teams when they're looking at a piece of writing that it just looks like drawing or scribbling, or it's just a string of letters, and to say like, oh, okay, this means they're at a stage 1, or this means they're at, a stage 3 on the developmental writing scale. And to even look of, okay, where can I go after that? What are some things that I can work on next? If I have just this like big long string of letters with no spacing, then we really need to work on that concept of word. Like words have spaces in between them. They have a certain number of letters. So maybe I'll go through and I'll do some writing and I'll count the number of letters in the words, and I'll point out the spaces when I see them. And then you start to look for that as it shows up in their own independent writing. And I think that just helps, where it doesn't feel like I don't know what this means, where you can see the progression. And it's like, okay, maybe I don't know what it means, or I don't know what it is that they're writing, but I can see that they're progressing towards more conventional writing. And that's what I want to see. It can help a lot, even for like goal writing too.
Yeah. And reframing that for parents too, who often are hearing the deficits that the child might have, or the things they didn't meet across the timeline of the IEP, seeing like, here's a representation of where their writing is at, and here's how we are moving forward. I think that can sometimes get missed, and it's a really helpful tool, like you said. We're going to link to all these resources because there's so many that Ashley is mentioning, and we'll definitely link them in the show notes. So if you guys are wanting to collect those, please make sure you check there. Okay, so we've shared a ton of resources about emergent literacy and supports and resources to kind of really take off and learn more if you guys are interested. But I can't let you go without mentioning, because we've talked about it on the podcast before, just all of the abundant resources you have shared for older students who use AAC. I can tell it's a passion of yours. And if you could share with our listeners just a few gems of wisdom and or resources you've talked about in the past, that would be ideal.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. So I think that one of the things that I think I try to keep in mind when working with older students is, we, as much as we care so deeply for our students and our teams, we're part-time players in their lives. We have a very part-time role, and we are going to transition out of that. And ultimately, we want the student and the learner to have as much autonomy and control and say in their life as they can. And so I think that thinking about that from really like a person-centered lens, what does the student like? What do we see them doing? What do they see themselves doing? What are their interests? And what are some ways that we can provide those opportunities while they're still with us, so that they can learn more about the things that they want to learn about, so that they can have a say, in their education and their learning as possible, I think is great. So like some key things that I like to use, or that teams that I work with that we've really started using, I would say over the past like several years, there is a person-centered, it's a person-centered communication preferences inventory that AssistiveWare has. It is fantastic. It goes through a conversation that you would sit down and have with an AAC user, and it talks with them about their preferences in communication interactions with other people. Do you prefer that people look at you, or do you prefer that they look at your device? Do you prefer that people try to guess a word if you're having a hard time spelling it, or do you want them to wait to finish their message? I think that really, there's some things that are best practice, I think, that are not best practice, I guess, ways to be a good communication partner that we can all do. But there's also individual preferences. There's times that I've done this for students. And I think that when I first started using that tool, I really thought like, no, I really need to wait until their message is finished. But I also, I have a student that I work with who has some vision difficulties that makes access really hard sometimes. And she does prefer if people try to guess her messages, because that decreases her fatigue and it doesn't make it so that it's so challenging for her. So she has a signal, whenever she's ready for somebody to try to guess what it is that she's trying to say. And that's something that we can use to kind of support her in her communication interactions with other people. But I think that that's important. It's important to think about that. The other thing is having students be a part of that IEP planning process. have them sit at the table. They need to be in there. They're 14 years old. They have a transition plan. They need to be in the room. Have them make like a slideshow, or it could be anything. It could be a short speech. It can be a slideshow. If they're shy and they don't want to do that, they could do a recording. I mean, give options. There's lots of different ways that they can present, and have them talk about the things that they like. What are the things that they're proud of that they did this year? What are some of the things that they want to learn? That one is a key one. I've had so many students say, I want to learn to read and write. Many students have said that at 14, 15, 16. So that can be buy-in for anybody. They're saying that they want to learn to read and write, or that they want to get better at reading and writing. How are you going to argue with that? Right? Like, how are you going to argue with that? So just thinking about that, how can we support them in leading their own lives, saying what it is that they want?
And what I hear you mentioning again is that autonomous piece. So I think sometimes what we need to unpack is the fact that independent and autonomous are two different things. So independent is like, can I do it myself? And autonomous is, where's my intrinsic drive to do exactly say and have my message clearly understood by whoever it is. It's very individualized, right? I can have two independent users that have very different levels of autonomy, and making sure that we support that autonomy with their individual person-centered responses and wishes and desires. And literacy is such a big part of that. So full circle, it comes back to, if most individuals have an intrinsic drive to learn literacy, if not early on, then once they have the understanding of what it can offer. So coming back to that, and asking them simply, what do they want to learn? Right.
Yes.
And tying it back, like, it goes beyond just visual schedules and first then boards and making choices, right? It's, do they want to learn how to take a video? Do they want to have peer vocabulary on their devices so they can use the slang?
Yes. Oh my gosh.
Are using.
Yes, exactly.
So powerful. I think such an important takeaway message. The last thing I ask everyone that comes on the podcast is to just share your favorite AAC moment. It's probably really tricky for you to narrow it down to one. But if there's one that's kind of stuck in your memory, just what's your favorite AAC moment? It doesn't have to be surrounded by literacy or a young adult.
Oh gosh, it is such a tough one. I think, like learning AAC is a journey for all of us. It's a journey for our students. It's a journey for us. Like we can never know anything. And sometimes I'm just, humbled by like what I don't know, what I need to learn. I
love your quote about learning is unlearning. Like, I love that. I've never heard that. And that is going to be the title of this episode, because I just think it's so great.
It is. I mean, gosh, I look at the way that I did things such a well-intentioned clinician years ago. And it's just not the way that I do things today. And sadly, I think that I could probably say the same thing in like 10 years or something, but we're always growing. That's the thing about like science and research, it's never ending. I guess like for me, I think, I'm thinking about this story where I was working with a student who, was using an eye gaze device and it died. In the middle of our session. And I was like, oh, okay. So I got out the charger, I got it out of the backpack, I plugged it in. And when we had rebooted the device, it was asking for like a password to get in. And the eye gaze technology was not working for me to unlock it. And he was just laughing. Like he was just hysterically laughing at me. And I was like, oh my gosh. I was like, what's the password? Like, is it written down? I'm looking everywhere. He was a newer student. I feel like I have better systems in place, but even when I don't, there's times that we are the most well-intentioned clinicians and, we don't have these systems in place, but he was new, to be fair. I called the teacher. The teacher gave me a password. I put it in, it was wrong. I texted the paraprofessional. I gave her the password. It was wrong. Meanwhile, he is just like laughing hysterically this whole time. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what can I do? What can I do? What can I do? And I was like, an eye gaze board. Yes, I can do an eye gaze board. So I got the back of my plexiglass left over from COVID and I put like little sticky notes with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And I did like an eye gaze scan for him to tell me his password. And it worked. And I was dancing around the room. I was like, oh, I troubleshooted that. Like I did that.
Amazing.
But it's like anybody else, you know, with like more experience with eye gaze, they would have been like, yeah, that's what you do. But I don't work with a lot of eye gaze users. So for me, it was a win for me. It made my student laugh because, you know, he can see this isn't, you know, my area of expertise, but it was great. Like it just was. And it just, I think it like even gives the power to low tech communication and always making sure we have a backup and, you know, thinking outside of the box, like what are you going to do when the device dies? You know, there's lots of different things to think about with things like that. So
sometimes light tech is the best tech.
Sometimes it is. So yeah, more of a funny story.
And just sheer joy.
My students thought it was funnier than you all probably do.
I mean, I can see it. I can visualize this entire thing happening in my head. It's happened to me several times. Just, yeah. So funny.
Gosh.
So funny. Yeah. Well, thank you so much. If anyone wants to get in contact with you or has questions, what is the best way to reach out?
The best way is probably through my Instagram. I'm at Mrs.Larisey. I'm most active on there. I get more active during the school year. I take my summers very seriously, but I go back to work in like very soon. So I'll be back and posting shortly. So
well, and this will air during the school year. So everyone hopefully will follow her if you don't already, because you're going to be sharing a bunch more resources that will be very applicable for everyone this school year. So, all right, for Innovative AAC Solutions, I'm Laura Hayes. We just want to thank Ashley for coming on today. Reach out if you have questions, and we'll catch you next time.
So Ashley shared with us a link to her Padlet emergent literacy resources that she just recently put together for a presentation that she did at ATIA. And I wanted to make sure you guys kind of had an idea of what's there when you click on the link. So the headings at the top are assessment, alphabet knowledge, phonological awareness, shared reading, independent writing, predictable chart writing, embedding AAC and literacy routines, and professional development. So as I go across, you get to see more of the headings. And then within each of these headings, as you scroll down, there are more PDFs, articles, research, and then there's, again, different sites that you can link to. So on this one, Reading and Writing for All, if you click on the sites google.com, that it's right there, with it, it takes you to that particular site. And this one then has, more information, things that you might click on and explore further. Okay, so I go back to her Padlet and work our way across. I want to go back up on this alphabet knowledge and just make sure you guys have the chart here for letter of the day, letters and sounds. So what we know is sometimes people have talked about letter of the week, but it takes you a long time to go through the 26 letters of the alphabet more than just a couple of times during a year. So if you change it each day, it gives the students a chance to have a lot more exposure. So this is a nice way to talk about the cycles and, most for the first cycle, it's most to least frequently occurring, alphabetical order, sounds in the letter name first. So they've got it all marked and organized for you. So again, as I work my way across her different sections here, some of this looks familiar because this is things we recently shared with the alternate pencils, but then you have professional development. She's got a Facebook group that she's giving you information about. Project Core, professional development module. She mentioned those during the interview. Literacy Bill of Rights. So wonderful, organized resources that you can take advantage of and share with your teams.
So for this week's activity, you guys, I have another fun one. Sight word SWAT. Sight word SWAT. So you might be thinking, sight words, Lara? Sight words? This activity is something that we can use for all different types of students and for all different types of language targets. Okay, so the sight word SWATs comes with 4 different colored fly swatters. And then, gosh, a bag of, what does it say on here? It's gotta be at least 110 double-sided cards. So the 110 double-sided cards are all different colors, right? Love me some different colors that we can target in an activity. And then sight words that are different. So like this one right here has him and try on each side. So we could flip them over as we're learning sight words, right? But we could put anything on these cards. Again, we could laminate it or just not have these little bugs at all. We could put them on different animals, or maybe things that we should or shouldn't SWAT, right? Like if we had pictures of our like classmates and we had pictures of bugs on the table that we laminated, what do we SWAT? No, we don't SWAT Johnny. Like, oh, a fly. Yes, SWAT the fly. Yes, get him. Put it down. Oh, I missed. Like, how can we direct other people's actions or direct their students' actions, right? We could comment on it like, good job, you got him. Oh no, you missed him. That was a bad SWAT or a bad hit. We could target all of those things. Where is it? Like, where did it go? It could move, right? We could magnetize these, or we could use this with a magnetized cookie tray and we could swat them as they move. We could put them in little boxes so that they kind of could jump out. If you had like a little popsicle stick and it jumps out, just take a cardboard box and put a slit in it and then have it jump out and then have the child try to swat it with this. That would be really fun too. I just love the fact that there's 4, right? So if we have a group of 4 students, they can all be taking turns. So we got some turn taking skills going on there as well. And then if I wanted to take the students' core vocabulary or the targets that they're working on another speech generating device, I can use one of our free editing softwares and I can download those symbols, whether it be Boardmaker, whether it be Symbol Sticks or Unity. We can download those and we can have them be the things that we SWAT to. So there's all different ways, unique ways to kind of just shift this idea of a fly swatter around that can be super motivating and engaging. But if you want this activity and all the things that come along with it, this is again called Sight Word SWAT. It's a learning resource and it is available in the IRC for checkout today. Cheryl, I had to stop the interview. I know you wanted more, and I'm sure listeners wanted more, but we couldn't talk forever. We wanted to.
Yeah.
We'll have to bring Ashley back.
That's the thing. It's like, I think doing these, ideally, like you said, bring her back, do some more, because it gives us time to process and think, and then we can learn more. She used the term learning to unlearn. And I was like, oh yeah, and if anything, it's true across the board, but I think that's where we're at right now as a field is we thought we knew it all. We were pretty much, we got this. And now it's like, oh. So I feel like literacy is a huge thing for me to unlearn things I thought, because it's different and I should be doing things differently. So I'm going to keep that as my mantra.
Yeah, I love that mantra too. I think we should always be growing, always be striving for more, for understanding more, for helping more, supporting more in the best ways that we know. And there's, it always goes back to, you know better, you do better.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. Well, I think that's all we have for this week, Cheryl. Any other final thoughts?
No, I'm excited to make sure everybody has a chance to learn and to share what you know. So I look forward to seeing you guys again next time.
Make sure you check out those resources. We have all of them linked in the show notes for Innovative AAC Solutions. I'm Laura Hayes.
And I'm Cheryl Livingston.
Catch you next time.
Bye.